Well, time for a quick special edition of the field because two of the greats of all time, two of the greatest, certainly of the modern era, two premiership superheroes from the Richmond and the Geelong Football Club have called it quits. I thought, well, it's inspired me to come in here to the mighty field studios in my shed and record a little something about both. Dustin Martin calls time and Tom Hawkins also calls time. Unbelievable careers for both. Absolutely phenomenal careers for both. Dustin Martin, 302 games, three premierships, three Norm Smith medals, three times the best player in the finals, aka the Gary Ayres medal winner. You know the drill. He was an absolute superstar, a man who could do everything on a football field, and he was a mercurial operator. Certainly someone who was shy, but certainly someone who was more than willing to do his bit for the mighty Tigers. Of course, questions swirled a lot around Dustin Martin and what his future would be. His week-to-week activity was becoming a bit of a circus, not through, I guess, necessarily his own doing, but the fact he doesn't speak much and the fact he's so popular and people want to know what he's doing at every single opportunity meant his life was being microscoped. His movements were being microscoped. And in the end, he calls time. And Tom Hawkins, he's working away in the shadows, trying to get himself back to play some AFL football in the back half of the season, or at least during the finals. His career ends, or sits, I should say, in a precarious position, I must say, because he's the games record holder for the Cats, 359 games and counting, 796 goals. So he sits so close to the 800 goal threshold, 5 times an All-Australian, 3 premierships, just like Dustin Martin, 11 times, yes, 11 times the leading goal kicker at the category, and a 2020 Coleman Medal winner. 2024 will be his last season. And whilst Dusty bows out effective immediately, no fanfare, no media conference, he left Brendan Gale to do that for himself. He leaves with a resume that has us all envious. Envious might be the right word there, Josh. As I mentioned, 302 games, 338 goals, 3 premierships, 3 norms, a Brownlow medal in 2017. And 2017 was a season where he won everything. He was the MVP of the competition as voted by his peers. He won the Brownlow medal. He won the Norm Smith medal. He won himself his maiden premiership medal. He was completely and totally dominant. He's a 4-time All-Australian, couple of BNFs, and unfortunately, his first premiership came at my expense. But what makes this game, the AFL, beautiful is it's different strokes for different folks. And Dusty is different from Hawk, but both are going to finish up, one now and one at the conclusion of the 2024 season. Firstly, my views on Dusty. I've never really spent much or any time around him, but I've never seen anyone separate games more so, particularly in this era, more so than Dustin Martin. I was on Geelong's playing list, and I spoke about this on SEN Radio earlier in the week. I was on the Cats list as a player, non-playing in the 2020 grand final. Now, the Cats are up by 21 points late in the second term. Of course, those games were COVID-shortened games, so shorter quarters, about 22 to 24 minutes. And the Cats are up by 21 points with only a couple of minutes to go before halftime. Richmond had only managed a couple of goals in the first half, and Dusty knew there was a moment to be seized. He kicked a goal from nowhere. He shrugged Jake Kolodjasny, and almost everyone in the stadium knew, hang on, Dusty's got something to say about this second half. It was an important goal. It was a crucial goal. It was a goal that gave Richmond some life after a first half where they didn't have a lot. He kicked another goal in the third quarter. He kicked 2 remarkable goals in the final term, including one at the very end just to seal himself into the record books as a 3-time Norm Smith medalist. He had 21 disposals and kicked 4 goals in that shortened game. It is the single greatest individual performance I've seen in a game of footy. I've never seen a more impactful performance from a player. And you'll say 21 disposals and 4 goals. That happens a lot. It happens 5 or 6 times a year. But his ability to impact a game when it needed to be impacted from Richmond's point of view was absolutely unbelievable. He redefined the midfield position when it come to getting forward and being attacking, being a goal scorer, being a goal creator. And even with 300 plus goals to his name, I believe his greatest asset was creating scores rather than kicking them himself. He was always an incredibly dangerous proposition when he'd plonk himself inside forward 50. I remember in the 2017 grand final, we thought we had a great matchup for him, Luke Brown. He was going to give away some size, but Luke Brown was a remarkable 1v1 defender for a period of time, and Dustin Martin was simply too big, too strong, and too good. He had, of course, the happy knack of making others better, his ability to use the ball by foot in an era where the gun midfielders and the elite AFL on ballers are more about clearances, contested possessions, and just getting the ball forward, either hacking it forward or bashing it forward. Dusty just had this ability to find a bit of space to use his legs, and the touch he possessed with ball to boot was absolutely unbelievable. I'd imagine Jack Revolt and others, Tom Lynch and the like who led to him, would absolutely, most definitely say that Dustin Martin was the best player to lead to. And I'm yet to even mention the signature move, the Dusty Fend, the fend off, the don't argue. I don't recall being a victim of the Dusty Fend, but I doubt I was ever able to even get close enough to cop the full wrath of the Fend. Dustin Martin, what a player. His place in the Hall of Fame and likely as a legend is assured. Congrats to him. Tom Hawkins. Tommy, I feel very fortunate indeed to have shared 4 years in the same 4 walls as the big Tomahawk, 2 as a player, 2 as a part-timer in the coaching staff. And his record, like Dusty's, speaks volumes. He's the game's record holder at the Cats. He passed his great mate Joel Selwood not too long ago, close enough to 800 sausage rolls. That's not the amount he's consumed. He'd be far north of that number. The amount of goals he has kicked or will kick, he'll get to 800 hopefully. But Tommy Hawkins is one of the great humans. He's someone I'm glad to say that I know personally. And from a playing perspective, my own playing perspective, my Geelong career provided me with next to nothing. Only a couple of games. But I don't regret it at all, because one of the great things about it was spending a couple of years with the great man, often training with Hawk or against Hawk, pretending I was a defender, trying to play on him. I loved it. I cherished it. I enjoyed it. And I was sad when it had to come to an end, because Hawk possesses 2 things in spades. He possesses a lot of great attributes, but 2 things in spades. He's got the competitive fire, the streak in him. And it's caused him some trouble over the journey with the MRO and the tribunal. But he's just got a fire to compete. It burns away, and it's hidden by his other great trait, and that's humility. I don't know that I've met a more humble superstar in my time. He loves to train and he loves to get better every day, but his humility stands out above everything. I used to have a bit of fun calling him the greatest of the modern era. He'd squirm and he'd muck around with me and just pretend that he acknowledged what I was saying. But in the end, I was able to win him over, and he playfully oblige and agree with me. But am I wrong? As a key forward, am I wrong when I suggest Tom Hawkins is the greatest of the modern era? So from 2000 onwards, again, almost 800 goals, number 2 all-time for goal assists, 3 times a premiership winning power forward, and he impacted grand finals, 5 All-Australians, most of those after the age of 30, if you don't mind. Maybe Jack Revolt rivals him. They've got very similar records. But does anyone else since the year 2000? Nick Revolt, Jack's cousin, springs to mind. Personally speaking, when it comes to BNFs and All-Australian gongs, Nick's got him covered, but no team honours on St. Nick's CV. That's not necessarily Nick's fault, but you shouldn't punish Tomahawk for being able to play in a great team. Jonathan Brown says hello. He's got 3 flags, just like Hawk. Only a couple of All-Australians, only. 3 times a club BNF winner, also a Coleman like Hawk. So Jono Brown's resume is very, very similar to Tom Hawkins. So when I say he's the greatest of the modern era, you might say I'm wrong, but if I am, I'm not far off. It's got to be a line ball decision between Revolt, both Revolts, Jack and Nick, Jono Brown perhaps, and my man Tommy Hawkins. His place in the AFL Hall of Fame is absolutely, totally, utterly assured. Dusty's place as an AFL legend is all but guaranteed later in life. I had the privilege of playing against both. I had the privilege of getting to know one very, very well. Congrats to both. I felt moved enough to come into the studio / the shed and talk about both Dustin Martin, even though he cost me and my teammates an opportunity to win an AFL Grand Final. He is and was a dead set freak of the game. Hopefully he's not lost to the sport. We shall see what his future holds. But if he doesn't want to be involved, guess what? He doesn't have to be involved. And the Hawk, I get the feeling he'll be involved in the game, whether it's a coaching role, whether it's in the media. He's been doing some work for Fox Footy. So looking forward to seeing what Tommy does with life after footy. Both have been amazing in their own different, very different ways. But I'll tell you what, both super effective. They've got 3 flags between them and they're on their merry way.